started watching a lot of pro CSs, so I get to see lots of different scenarios play out. And
Yes,
okay,
indeed. Welcome, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
don't really
Charlotte
need
versus Avant-Garde. We're going to get this grand final underway.
don't need any of this. Okay, right. Biggest problem on this map for the CTs we talked about on Dust 2 is actually more about rotation times. Is one of the biggest and most punishing things. This map has a similar issue insofar as the rotation time here is actually just so excruciating. It's really rough. I can't begin to imagine how I mean, you all know, like anyone who's played this map, you know how bad the rotation times are for the CTs from B to A and A to B. Um so one of the things about rotation times, a rotation time can be mitigated by two things effectively, and they're kind of interconnected in this way. One is information, and the other is the opponent's rotation times, or like the opponent's time to attack. So for example, if this position is so if the rotate if the T's attacked from here to A, and let's say this line, let's say like the rotation time for the CTs, let's say from B to A was like this or something. So it's just like just slightly longer, then the information that the CTs can get about the play coming in kind of mitigates the time in advantage that the T's have in rotation to that bomb site. However, like if you have a situation like Inferno where there's like it's really fucking long, man. It's like the rotation's so long. Even if you know the push is coming, you still and you know it within like 5 seconds in advance, it still probably won't be enough for you to get in position and actually have impact. So this creates like a very difficult problem on this map, because if you don't have banana control on this map as the CTs, you're often kind of absolutely fucked in many situations because you have to play more of a gambly type of Counter Strike. Now, there's also ways to handle those situations, and we'll go into it in a moment, like ways to kind of deal with the fact that sometimes you just won't have banana. Sometimes you just can't do it. Like sometimes there'll be issues. You won't have utility. You'll want to just be mixing things up, or there's another reason that's important. That's not those other two things I'll go into. But but yeah, so banana control is like really important because the CTs, it's as much like we saw with Long and Dust 2 where the CTs can start with 3 players there. Much the same for the banana run map. This is always the first rush timing you're worried about. Rushing A is far less common, and part of the reason is because it's generally harder to do and riskier. So even if like you rush it, if there's 2 players on A and they kind of hear you doing it, there's still some really strong positions for them, and you have to have some good utility to kind of mitigate that to actually successfully attack it. Otherwise, they'll probably do a pretty good job in defending it anyway, some of the time. So anyway, that's very risky. It's very risky. Um, so oftentimes you're way more worried about the B rush. So you can kind of safely a lot of time have 3 players towards B. And I'm not going to go into like all of like the meta evolutions of how this dynamic of taking banana control has raged on over the years between the CT side and the T side, because it has honestly, it would be really interesting to have someone make a piece of content going over like each year all of the developments teams have made in like just this fucking one one position of the map. It's unbelievable. So many changes have been had. Now, again, as I mentioned, like often what the CTs will do is they'll have like 2 players here, and they'll have like one guy that's probably like around the site, like conserving their nades, who can assist if necessary, but not always. And you always represent 2 players. 2 players will toss HEs and nades and stuff, and this guy will probably like just chill a little bit. But ultimately, like the CTs will try to take banana at the beginning of the rounds, and the Ts have 2 options. They can either give it up and just let the CTs have it, and maybe take deep banana control, which can be a problem later on, or they can challenge for it and watch the evolution Karrigan has actually made. I was showing the smoke on my stream yesterday. Actually, he throws the smoke around there, and when the CTs throw the close molly, because usually what happens is the CTs will throw a close molly and they throw a deeper molly, which basically clears out this entire spot, stops a rush, and forces the T's to be in these positions, in these one of these 2 positions, which then the double HEs come into here. You'll notice that happens. This is what happens. Molly, molly, the 2 nades can often come into these positions. And the meta might be changing now because that's been kind of what's happening for a while. But anyway, um, I'm going to take a quick digression to go back to what I was originally supposed to be talking about, which is the importance of this on information. Now, this position, if you do not have this position as a CTs, all you have is this site and this area here, and there could be a bunch of T's just sitting on here, ready to go for a set piece into the B1 site, and you might have basically like I don't know, like actually this doesn't make sense. Like you might have this guy and this guy. Like this is like a setup you might have like 2 on the B1 site and 3 on the A site. Now, you're never going to make it to B in time. It's going to be a 5 versus 2 effectively. So there's a huge issue in information there. You need to have you need to know when you need to have the extra players on the B bomb side to defend it correctly. You need to know that in advance. If you don't know that in advance, then as I said, you have to rely on 2 players trying to hold off against a huge rush. Even if it's just like 3 or 4 players, it can be very strong. Smoke will come down to coffins. It's going to come out on CT. We're gonna have a molly here, gonna have flashbangs going to the bomb site. Sometimes there might even be a smoke here. These will run across over here. It's gonna be just all kinds of crazy shit happening, and it's just 2 players to deal with it. And this smoke will prevent even when the rotation gets here, this rotation still can't have impact until they get towards construction or until they get close enough to go for a boost and maybe toss nades in. So it's a very long time until there's assistance. So you have to have some idea that this is happening beforehand. Otherwise, you're in a bad spot. Now, what usually happens is the Ts will take this position eventually away from the CTs who cannot necessarily hold it forever. And if they're successful in doing so, they'll be able to leave a player up here. Um, and and maybe they'll have like a second player to assist just in case there's a retake timing. But then usually there's a player like Doug in here, just hiding around somewhere around top banana, just keeping hold of it. Then what happens is you'll have at the same time as the 2 to 3 players will be taking banana. 2 players will be going towards apartments to clear apartments because you can pretty safely clear apartments because apartments fucking suck to the CTs these days. It's so like everything's paper thin and spammable. You can get one guy going through here, one guy going through here, and then what happens is this guy clears this position, and then this guy and then this guy they can have the option to double peek this guy. Now this is a left eye peek for the CT that's very close to the point of engagement. So this also kind of sucks, especially against a double peak. So if you're going to hold this as a CT, you need some kind of a aggressive like setup, um, so something like this. But if you're doing that, then you're kind of your defense is light elsewhere. It's a little bit risky. So once these positions have been like apartments has been cleared by the T's and they've got top banana, this is when the top mid take happens. This is the typical flow of a default on this map. It's extremely typical, very, 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 very predictable. You'll see this all the time. Banana take, the 2 guys will take apps control, then the top mid take comes. So once you know that, it changes how you think and watch the game because once you know that, then you can reasonably know that the other team, the CTs who are on the receiving end, they also know these things are happening. So when the CTs, for example, put 4 players at top mid, and you're like, why the fuck are they putting 4 players around top mid? That's so mad. Well, the reason is because it's actually extremely logical because a lot of the time the T's, as I just mentioned, they take banana control. They're not pushing B. They take banana control. They leave a guy there, then they go for a top mid take. If you have a setup ready to go as this top mid take comes through from boiler and from here, it's look at this, like this is a funnel where this is it. This is like the vision. This is like the sorry. This is the these are like the attack. I don't know, the points of attack for the T's. It's not like you're thinking, oh, they're gonna be shooting me from over here and from over here and from over here and from over here. It's just this and this typically. Um, Now they obviously balcony bursts do happen, but in a default that's not a default. So that's when like having a 4-man setup here, which looks really gambly, it makes complete sense. It's very logical. So once you know how the defaults function, the game starts to make a lot more sense. And also again, like this battle for banana control, like again in the Carrigan interview, he said he just didn't bother whatsoever with preparing anything else on the map because he knows that if you can beat a team with on banana control, it's a huge advantage. Now let's talk about some of the reasons why. Let's say you're a CT side and you're able to get that deep smoke, and that deep smoke is pretty money. Now, this is really interesting. I talk about this in the cast all the time because I think there's a lot of teams that don't necessarily understand what the protocol should look like in this instance. If you get a really deep smoke as the CTs, there's a huge problem because as the Ts, there's a question now. Are they playing the deep smoke to cheat an extra player towards A? So then they can have, you know, they can have that four-man setup. I'm trying to think like what it's going to look like typically. I guess it just really depends on what's happening in the round because sometimes it can be the case that you'll have a guy deep with the smoke setup and there's actually a lot of pressure around mid. So it might be the case that you got a guy arch and it actually looks more like a guy playing site, a guy playing like it could be like as far back as this, but whatever it is, the reason why this position is so strong is that even when the smoke goes away, this guy, he's playing it correctly. I mean, usually it's going to be an AWPer. He's able to obviously, if he has the right nades left over, he can see the push coming. So what you'll often see happening, this is what you have to do also. You also, if, when you're playing, you should think about this. If you're going to go rotate back for a B play when you know that they've smoked banana, you haven't challenged it, it's very likely they either have one guy here playing this I'm going to spot and fall back to site, buy time, get my team to rotate in kind of play, or they've got a two-man setup here. So you've got someone in this position or maybe someone in this position, something like that. Obviously, this is a little bit more scary, but it's less the case that people do that because one of the safest way to play this position where you get the most advantage most of the time as a CTs is to have one guy here and to have the four guys otherwise on A. So what you do as a Ts is just throw a high flash, and by doing the high flash, this guy gets blind and he has no choice but to fall back because his life is extremely valuable. If he dies, the round is 100% lot. Well, I don't ever say 100%, but it is extremely difficult to win the round for the CTs if he dies. If he doesn't die, because his job is not to kill people, it's to buy time. Now, some pro players will kill everyone, and that's how they buy time. My name is not Woxic or Zywu or anyone else who's a ridiculous AWPer, so or simple whatever. So I can't comment on what they do, but generally speaking, this is what you're supposed to do. And you fall back to the bomb site. Maybe you drop a smoke if you had a smoke or a molly to buy time, or you got flashes or whatever it is. You post up. They have to respect it. They have to use their utility that slows them down. They got to coordinate push in. You've bought time for the pushover. Brilliant. Now, that's an extremely strong position. Now, imagine the opposite. We already talked about it. Don't have banana control. You have no idea if there's 3 people here, 5 people here, 2 people here, one, but you just don't know. The only way that you can know that, and this is one of the ways that the CTs will handle it, is a top mid retake timing. Now, given what we know about the defaults and how we know that the team has to attack A, they obviously have to have top mid positioning of some respect, or it's going to be some kind of balcony all in, which is very awful. It's an awful all in if there's like 5 CTs left alive and 3 on the bomb site, and it's like this, or it's like this position and this. It's awful to just, in my opinion, unless you have like some really sick flashes, to just have everybody come out of here. That's just not going to happen ever really. Obviously, there balcony bursts happen where flashes go through and then people jump out into these positions. That is a strat that happens, but it is a little bit gambly. At least in my opinion. I'm not a pro player, so Anyways, so what happens is you'll get these top mid retake timings. So, and this is where we talked about pacing. This is where pacing comes into play because you have to read if a team plays really slow, kind of like middling pace, or they're a faster paced team. Because if they're a really slow paced team, they may be waiting at 30 seconds for you to go for an info play, and they may just absolutely smash you with players playing anti flash, and you've come out the site and they're just going to own you, and now you've given them the bomb site. That's a problem with a team that plays really, really slow. So you have to know the pacings. It's not so simple as to just do information timings at 45 seconds, which is what I would say would be between 45 to 50 seconds. That's the average timing whereby a team will decide in the mid round what they're going to commit to in terms of a bomb site. But that's one of the ways you do it. Now, the other way that you do it as a CTs, if in the early round you've given up banana, and look at me talking about way more than I expected to. is you decide to go for a not top banana retake. You don't, and this is amazing because teams are so creative. So you'll see like a smoke getting thrown. I actually forget where the smoke lineup is from. I don't know if it's from here or if it's from here, wherever. It doesn't really matter. But there's a smoke that goes there, flashbangs that go over, and then a two-man push. Um, and if there's any T in this position holding whilst his team is going for that top mid take default as we talked about, this guy gets absolutely wrecked. And that's really important because once that happens and you've seen that there's just like one guy there, you immediately rotate the other guy. That creates huge issues for the T side. So this is another. So it's all about information plays for the CTs. And if you don't want to do information plays, then you have to win banana. It's one of the two. There is a third thing that you can do. It just kind of sucks, but it relies upon this idea that we don't really like to rely on, and it's this idea of um, it's this idea of. Well, actually, there's another thing about retaking banana. You reminded me of Versace. It's this idea that you never want to rely on the other team just being shit at Counter Strike. You you want to you want to always anticipate and do your research. If you're at the pro level and understand what the weaknesses of the other team is, but you never really want to necessarily rely on them making mistakes. That's not really how you want to necessarily kind of win the game. But if you are gonna, like we already talked about it, let's say like you don't have any information for whatever reason, you've decided that the other teams is just sucking at their set pieces or their utility, the amount of utility they have is really really low. That's a more acceptable reason to do this. And if you play a really long drawn out round, that could be the case. You've got like a, I don't know, like a Keaton potty set up there, and you've got no information on A. You've got like a guy playing Moto and a guy playing on site or like site box, and you got a guy like in pit or something like that. Like the most far back setup you can think of. You've given up the entire map. This can work without any information at all, and just try to play defense on the side. It can work, but it's not. You don't want to be in that position. That's not the ideal. You want to be in a position where you have the information and you have the position. If you don't have this, you gotta take this back, or you gotta take this back. Now, there's another issue that you could. This is what I prefer T sides do, but they don't do enough of in general on the pro scene. When the CTs throw this deep banana smoke, as we've already said, it's like very powerful because, and there is a slight drawback here, which we'll go into in a moment, but it's very powerful. So you like imagine if you just respect this smoke. What does that mean? It means that if they do just rotate someone back straight away, you're gonna, what are you left to do? Like you can't just sit around and wait for the smoke. I mean, you can if you want, but it kind of sucks to do that. It's more powerful to just flash through the smoke and make a play, maybe catch them kind of positioning or catch one guy running back, and you've isolated a guy there and you fight him and trade him and kill him or something like that. And it is just respect the smoke and let it play out. What happens, and I don't like this, is that a lot of teams tend to leave that smoke and they're like, oh fuck, I guess we can't go banana then. Let's just take top middle. Um, Now, I really don't like that because what is the one thing that the CTs are expecting you to do when they fucking blocked off a part of the map? Is for you to go to the other part of the map. So that's why I don't personally like that. And what I like is I even just like throw a flash through, just like a flash or just some kind of a pressure to just make an argument for the CTs to keep two players towards B because they think that you might potentially be going through that smoke. Um, as opposed to just like giving up and going there and then later going back and taking banana because you've given up a lot of time in doing that. Now, one of the other interesting dynamics on banana is the dynamic of the utility trade battle. Now, if the T's and the CTs both decide to throw their utility down banana, now one of these two teams is going to win, most likely. And at the end of it, one of these two teams might be up or down players, but one or two of these, like the team that loses, will most certainly have less utility and less position, and so therefore a significant disadvantage to the other team, compared to the other team. So what tends to happen if one team has better timings with their nades, and this is the thing whereby certain teams understand how to like throw specific nade timings to make their lives a bit easier in terms of how they will take banana against what you're doing. If they kind of just solved you in that way, whatever it is, what you can decide to do is let them throw all their shit, let them take it, and then just as I mentioned, just do a banana retake straight. Like not it can be straight away. Um, probably usually better to do it with a delay. You can represent the default still by just having your two guys going for the apps take. And that's totally cool. So there's lots of different dynamics around banana. I'm not a super huge fan of Inferno. I think it's a really exciting map in pro play. But I don't like how punishing it is for the CTs. I think that teams have been really creative in kind of dealing with these problems. And for me, it's better than Dust 2 in that respect. But yeah, banana is such an amazing source of information. If you don't have as the CTs, you are blinds on this map and you have to take risks with these aggressive information plays and setups. And if you do have it as the CTs, you have significant advantages, which means that the Ts can't really let you have it for free. And they know that you want to take it because of how much it gives you. So that's why it creates this like amazing kind of battle. And Astralis were the first team that really showed us how to do it as the CTs. So there we go. That's me talking about Inferno a bit. Um, as some of the basics in terms of the strategy and how you're getting advantages as either team. I'm approach. Should I continue playing black bars or switch to stretched? It's definitely a complete preference. It's all preferential, man. Whatever feels better for you. It's one of those things where you'll find people who can perform really well in pretty much everything. If you look at Rops, he plays on what is probably the least used settings, which is the same thing as what I use, which is just native resolution like 1920 by 1080. You'll find loads of people that play really well with stretch, loads of people that play really well with black bars, and it's not the answer that you wanted to hear. But you know, having good kind of aim mechanics and stuff like that is a lot more than just your kind of resolution and aspect ratio settings, and it is something that you know it's going to require a lot of comfort. And so you just have to like find whatever you identify with the most, whatever is most comfortable for you. Nothing's going to turn you in, like no setting is going to turn you into a beast. Um, but uh, but settings can make you feel more comfortable. So that's really what you should be striving for.